Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we plunge into a stack of sources and extract the most important nuggets of knowledge. Today, we're taking a fresh look at a story you probably think you know inside and out, but our deep dive reveals a truly, well, unexpected twist.
Indeed. Yeah, we've been handed a really fascinating re-examination of one of cinema's most iconic romances, Jack and Rose from Titanic. Our material today, it actually challenges the very foundation of their initial connection, suggests it was far from the whirlwind romantic ideal we've all seen on screen.
That's right. So our mission today is to unpack this surprising perspective, really dissecting the true motivations and, the complex circumstances that brought them together on that ill-fated ship. You might be genuinely surprised by what these insights reveal about why these two really found themselves drawn to each other. So, what's the truth behind the legend? Let's dive in. Okay, so our deep dive takes us right to the very first spark between Jack and Rose. And what's revealed is, well, it's described as a truly unconventional origin. You have Rose, contemplating a really desperate act, and Jack, who's just won his ticket, he's just feeling incredibly lucky. The immediate reframing of Jack's role here is quite something.
Yeah, it really is. The initial interaction, the source argues, wasn't about love at first sight for Jack. Not at all. Instead, he observes a very well-dressed, beautiful girl from the elite class on the brink of breaking down. And apparently his background, his poverty, it taught him to quickly recognize these profound negative emotions. And, being an artist, he was driven by this keen desire to observe and landscape their truest emotions on paper. Remember all his sketches.
Yeah.
So this sets up a very different dynamic right from the start.
Okay, so it's less about a heroic rescue then,
Yeah.
and more about a calculated opportunity. Is that what you're saying? The insights emphasize Jack's profound belief in his own insane luck and his self-worth, seeing himself as the richest person on the Titanic.
Right. Just because he had the air in his lungs, a few precious blank pages, and his lottery ticket. That's the quote. And this really prompts us to question his motives, doesn't it? Was it genuine concern when he sought Rose, or was it more like Lady Luck smiling at him all over again? It suggests he saw a distinct chance to, quote, do good with someone from the elite. A world he otherwise wouldn't really access. He absolutely jumped at the opportunity to engage with a rich girl. That's how it's put.
And he wasn't just talking, was he? The source calls him street smart, able to, lace his words into a rhyme, even threatening to jump after her with that line we all know, you jump, I jump. But the argument here is this wasn't about nascent love. This was a calculated move.
Exactly. Making her responsible for his potential death, he knew her super elite teaching wouldn't allow her to put another's life in danger. It's quite cynical when you look at it that way.
So what does this tell us about their very first connection?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, it paints a pretty clear picture, according to this source. Did Jack love Rose? No, he did not. That's the direct statement. For him, she was simply another one of his many adventures. It suggests he already planned on just filing her into his sketches, stories, and memories. Much like, remember that rich old woman he sketched at the bar earlier? Kind of the same thing. Just moments to capture.
yeah. But, okay, if Jack's intentions were initially so pragmatic, let's say, what truly shifted his focus? Because, as you said, the deep dive suggests he wasn't actually going to pursue Rose beyond that initial save and maybe the first-class meal he got invited to. He would have just admired her from afar. So what changed everything?
Right, this is crucial. The catalyst, it turns out, according to this analysis, was Cal, Rose's fiancé. Cal was described as rude, arrogant, and too controlling, and he deeply resented this poor boy rescuing a rich, lonely girl. Hated it.
Okay, yeah, you definitely see that in the film.
Absolutely. Cal constantly snubbed Jack, spoke about a real man making his own luck, basically mocking Jack's lottery win. And he kept reminding Jack of his place in the third class, telling him he had no place talking about politics and money, really putting him down.
So Cal's taunts weren't just like background noise. They really got under Jack's skin, bruised his ego.
Deeply, that's the argument. And Jack, who, as we established, believed in luck and seizing opportunities, he saw this as his chance, a chance to show Cal exactly where he stood, put him in his place.
And how did he choose to do that?
Through his woman. That's the phrase used.
Wow.
This is presented as Jack's core motivation then for actually pursuing Rose. She became a means to an end. She became a conquest, a challenge, his revenge, a chance to heal back his badly bruised ego. He apparently understood she was already halfway in love with him, and he knew he looked like one of them in that borrowed suit. He had already seduced her mind and body, with the drawing scene and everything. Now, the goal was to claim her emotionally.
Which leads us straight to that famous third-class party scene, right? Which this source paints as another strategic move entirely. It says Jack milked the moment,
Yeah.
making sure Rose danced as obscenely loud in public as possible, drank, got loud, got wild.
Exactly. Why? Because Jack knew, or at least strongly suspected, she was being followed, spied on, and watched by Cal's sidekick. Remember Lovejoy?
Okay, so this whole wild public display,
Uh-huh.
it was designed to get back to Cal.
Precisely. To be reported back, bruising him badly on the gut and groin without Jack having to lift a single finger at him. Aw.
The source is pretty clear here. If Jack had actually loved Rose at this point, truly loved her, he would have cared about her reputation and well-being. He would have known she was engaged and technically off limits. But that wasn't the priority.
And the effect on Cal, we see it, don't we? He completely loses it. Oh, absolutely. The source says Cal turned into a monster, overturning the table, almost fleeing Rose. He was utterly humiliated by Jack's actions. So this paints this picture of Jack achieving his calculated revenge, right? Reviving his manhood by almost conquering a woman way beyond his reach and another man's fiancée.
Okay, let's flip the coin now. Let's shift our focus and look at Rose's motivations. Because the insights suggest her reasons for engaging with Jack were equally complex. And perhaps surprisingly, not initially about romantic love either.
Yeah, this part is really illuminating too. It dives into Rose's internal state. She was bored, that's the word used, bored of her life, the safety it provided, the security it ensured, and the sheer monotony of it all. She's described as a kind of new age woman for her time, reading taboo subjects, which gave her this tantalizing glimpse of a different world, a different way to live. Essentially, a poor little rich girl who desperately wanted adventure.
And Jack was that adventure.
Exactly. She saw Jack as her roller coaster ride for the rush she so craved. He represented everything her life wasn't.
So her attraction to Jack, it was less about him as an individual person maybe, and more about what he represented, freedom, rebellion.
That's certainly the angle here. The sources highlight her mother's relentless pressure, too. Marry Cal to escape the family's crushing debt. Effectively using her to get out of the debt, Rose felt she had played a role her mother had spelled out for her, and that role suffocated her and almost killed her, leading to that moment on the stern.
So connecting with Jack wasn't just about seeking adventure.
No, it was also, according to this interpretation, her own sense of revenge to the rest of her crowd, and most profoundly, her mother. It was her way of saying, fuck you all.
Wow. That puts a whole different spin on it.
It really does. And the conclusion drawn is quite stark if the ship hadn't sunk. Well, the source suggests it would have been a passing phase for Jack and Rose, just a fleeting fling for him, fulfilling his revenge goal, and a moment of personal revenge and rebellion for her. Both likely forgotten after the voyage ended.
Okay, so if it truly wasn't love from the very beginning, for either of them, according to this perspective,
Yeah.
when did it become love? Because the source does say it happened, right?
Yeah.
It pinpoints a very specific pivotal moment.
It does, yes. This is where the narrative shifts dramatically. Jack didn't fall insanely in love with Rose, it argues, when they first made love in the car, no. It was specifically when Rose jumped off the lifeboat, jumped back onto the sinking ship to be with him, ran back to Jack. That act for him was the ultimate acid test.
An acid test. What exactly does that mean for Jack? Especially given his background you mentioned earlier.
Well, think about it. For a poverty-stricken orphan boy who had no life and family at all, seeing anyone willing to literally lay down their life for him, that was monumental, unthinkable perhaps. The insight states there was someone who could lay down their life for him. This was his acid test. And in that precise moment, he loved Rose with all his life till his death. It was this profound validation, proof that this rich, spoiled girl, as he might have initially seen her, was actually naive enough or perhaps brave enough to love a man with no past, present, and future. For both of them, in that moment, it apparently became more than intimacy. It became real.
Right. And once that love solidified, that's when the legend of Jack and Rose truly began. We see Jack fighting with all his wit and his experience of survival to keep Rose safe throughout the sinking and even afterwards in the water. But then we come to the most debated moment of their story, the plank, or the door, whatever it was.
Ah, yes, the door debate. Well, the sources we looked at offer a pretty definitive stance on this. Quote, could Jack have been saved? No, he could not have. Full stop. It states they did try briefly to get on the plank or door together, but his sharp instinct told him that the wooden plank would not have saved both of them. It had room only for one, so he opted out.
So, not physically impossible necessarily, but his instinct, his survival sense, told him it wouldn't work for both.
Exactly. It wasn't just noble selflessness, maybe, but also a pragmatic recognition of the impossible physics of the situation in that freezing water.
Okay, but what was the deeper motivation then for this ultimate sacrifice? Beyond just that newfound love, the insight seemed to connect it back to Jack's core belief about life itself, about self-worth.
Yeah, this really challenges our usual understanding of Jack's final moments. His sacrifice is framed as his payback to Rose for her love for him. He paid her back with the most precious thing he possessed,
Yeah.
his life. And remember his earlier statement about making each day count. Life is not to be wasted worrying about tomorrow.
Right, make it count.
This was his ultimate moment then to
Ah.
make sure his life got its worth. It was his way, perhaps, of ensuring that history remembered him forever as Rose's memory, her deepest secret. So it reframes the sacrifice not just as selfless love, but as a kind of triumph in his personal game of life, making him, in his own eyes perhaps, a winner.
And Rose, in that moment, the source says she was just overwhelmed.
Yeah, too disoriented to think clearly. She saw him as this tough man who was sure of himself, and she maybe believed he was all right half submerged in the chilling waters. Maybe she couldn't conceive that he wouldn't make it. She thought he'd survive. But Jack, knowing he wouldn't, made her promise.
Promised to survive,
Yeah.
to live for the both of them. A promise she certainly kept.
She absolutely did.
So, wow. We started this deep dive thinking we knew the love story of Jack and Rose, maybe one of the most famous love stories ever told, only to find our sources suggesting a much more nuanced, maybe even calculated initial connection based on opportunity, observation, revenge.
Yeah, not exactly love at first sight.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It wasn't until disaster struck and that profound, life-altering act of loyalty from Rose jumping back that true love really blossomed, at least for Jack.
Yeah.
And his ultimate sacrifice, while undoubtedly selfless on one level, is also painted here as this moment where his very life gained its ultimate worth, securing his place in history through Rose's enduring memory.
Indeed. It's a re-examination that really forces us to look beyond the beautiful surface of a classic tale, to consider the complex, sometimes surprisingly self-serving human motivations that can underpin even the most legendary romances. It just reminds us that stories, like people, often have layers far deeper than what first appears on the surface.
So what stands out most to you from this re-examination? Does it fundamentally change how you view Jack and Rose's iconic story now? Perhaps it encourages you, our listeners, to maybe rewatch the film with some of these insights in mind. Look for those subtle cues, those hidden meanings that might have been there all along. Because I have to say, once you see it this way, it's kind of hard to unsee it.